phones, Babylons can't crack the code.
The 2021 college football season is officially drawing to an end, and it has been an interesting season to say the least. This is B. Kelly back again with another banger video, and in today's video, y'all, I am going to be talking about 5 disappointing teams from this season that have not met any expectations that people really expected with some preseason hype that they had. Now, before I move on with the video, guys, remember to smash that like button and subscribe if you haven't already, as we are on the road to 10K. Now, let's get into it. The first team that I am going to be talking about in this video from the Big 12 Conference is Texas. Now, Texas heading into the season was seen as a team that was going to be solid. People really liked this Steve Sarkisian hire. They returned a good amount of their players from last season, and they came in preseason ranked 21st in the nation. And after their first game, in which they beat a top 25 Louisiana team, they would bump up to number 15 in the nation. They would start the season 4-1, with their only loss being to a good and stout Arkansas squad, in which they did look very, very suspect in a 21-40 loss. But after that game, they were looking strong against Rice, Texas Tech, and TCU. And then in the first half versus Oklahoma, Texas looked like they were going to win that game and have a very promising season and potentially be in the Big 12 championship game. Well, many of you guys probably already know, but Texas blew a big lead to Oklahoma and would end up losing 55-48, and they've been on a losing streak since then. They are currently 4-7, and they are not going to a bowl game this season. Texas football under year 1 for Steve Sarkisian has straight up been disappointing, and that's the truth. Texas is a team that should be a bowl team. I was not expecting them to be in the Big 12 championship game, but I was at least expecting them to go 8-4. 7-5 at the worst, but they're currently 4-7. They could potentially finish 4-8. They're not going to a bowl game. They lost to Kansas 57-56. And I will say, I think Leipold is a great hire for Kansas. I think they are trending in the right direction as with how their program has been recently. But still, they lost 57-56 at home. And ever since that loss to Oklahoma, they have just been looking worse and worse each week. They blew a lead to Oklahoma State, blew a lead to Baylor. They blew a very, very tiny lead to Iowa State, but they looked horrible that game as they lost 30-7. I think they have a culture problem, and I think the video after the Iowa State loss speaks volumes. People entering the transfer portal during the season and having problems at practices with players. This is something that nobody would have seen going into this season, especially with some of the hype that Texas had heading in. Now, of course, there's probably going to be someone in the comments like, I saw this coming from a mile away. Like, come on. Did you really see Texas going 4-8 and having this many problems and potentially ending on an 8-game losing streak? I mean, let's be real. Nobody saw this coming. Sticking with the Big 12 Conference, we have Iowa State. Now, heading into the season, Iowa State was a top 10 preseason team at number 7. They were returning some of the most production in college football, as they are basically returning the entire team from the previous year that was a top 10 team. But Iowa this season has been disappointing. They're currently 6-5, and they've been the definition of inconsistent. What do I mean by that? They're playing up to their competition, and then they're playing down to their competition. An example of a loss they had at Texas Tech, 41-38. But they did beat Oklahoma State at home, 24-21. Another example, they stomped Texas at home, 30-7, and they barely lost to Oklahoma, 28-21. No, playing those teams is not the easiest, but they stuck with them. But what else happened? They lost to West Virginia 38-31. This was supposed to be Iowa State's season. This was supposed to be the year that they broke that 10-win curse that they have, in which they've never had a 10-win season in school history. This was going to be that season. They were potentially even going to be a playoff team, and they have not met those expectations at all. With all the talent they had coming back, it is very disappointing to see them be 6-5 currently, potentially be 6-6, but more than likely be 7-5 to close the regular season. Switching over from the Big 12, we're going to go to the best proclaimed conference in college football, the SEC. And we're going to be talking about Florida. Florida heading in was the number 13 team in the nation, and were even ranked number 10 at 1 point. But currently, right now, they're battling to just make a bowl game. Right now, they're 5-6, and if they do not beat Florida State in their last game, they're not going to a bowl game. They have to win to make a bowl game. And they started out the season decent. I mean, they started off 3-1, and they looked like a pretty good team versus Alabama. They only lost by 2 when Alabama was ranked first at the time, 29-31. Then a couple weeks later, they did lose to Kentucky, 13-20. But hey, that Kentucky team's not horrible. You know, it happens. You lose games here and there. Then they got upset by LSU, 42-49. Got whooped by Georgia, which is expected at this point this season. Then probably the loss that hurt them the most so far this season was losing to South Carolina. And it wasn't just a loss to South Carolina, it was a blowout, 40-17. South Carolina quite literally ate Gator for dinner that day. Then the next game, Samford. You know, you're supposed to beat FCS opponents by a lot. Florida instead gave up a total of 52 points and had to drop 70 to beat them. You know, Florida football in this season, I was actually expecting them to have a down year, and I actually thought they were overrated heading into the season. I even got hate for thinking that. And I would say this, I was not expecting Florida to be this off. You know, Florida, they have to win to make a bowl game versus Florida State. A 6-6 season after having a great year the season prior, it's just sad to me. You know, it's disappointing. You know, they had a good start off to the season, and then everything's just started to fall apart. Now they have no coaching staff, pretty much, it seems like, after Dan Mullen's fired, defensive coordinators fired. Everybody's just getting fired at Florida, and next season is going to be an entirely new staff. On to the next team, we're going to take it to the ACC and talk about Miami. Miami was seen as a top 15 team heading into the season, and, well, they dropped out of the top 25 pretty quickly, as in just 3 weeks, they were already out of the top 25, and have not been in the top 25 since then. They're currently 6-5. They had a lot of expectations heading in the season, as people thought this was going to be Manny Diaz's best year as the head coach of Miami, as they might actually have a chance to go to the ACC championship game, / potentially even win the conference if they play their best football. But that's been far from the truth, as they're currently 6-5, and they probably will win their last game versus Duke and be 7-5. But all these mediocre seasons from Miami with Manny Diaz is surely going to have him on the hot seat either right now or heading into next season. The final team I am going to be talking about in today's video from the Pac-12 conference is USC. USC heading into the season was a top 15 team as they ranked 15 on the AP preseason poll, and people thought they could potentially even win the Pac-12 conference, as the Pac-12 is honestly kind of a suspect conference with how strong it actually is. It seems like, you know, if you just upset someone or win some key games, you're probably going to win the conference or get to the conference championship. And USC seems like a team that could do that, as, I mean, they have the roster to win the conference, no doubt. But this year has been, this has not been the year for the Trojans at all, as they currently sit at 4-6, and they have to win out to go to a bowl game. And they have number 13 BYU at home, and they have to travel to Cal, which they should beat Cal. Emphasis on should, but I don't think they're going to beat BYU at all. I don't think this USC team is beating BYU, and this USC team has not been very good. Their offense hasn't looked great, and their defense has looked bad all season long. And yes, Clay Helton did get fired 2 games into the season after they had an embarrassing loss to Stanford, but Dante Williams as the interim head coach is 3-5, and USC is more than likely not going to go to a bowl game. I mean, they could upset BYU, but I think it's highly unlikely. Well, guys, if you guys made it this far in the video, leave future video suggestions down in the comments below, and leave down your thoughts of other disappointing teams. There have been more than just these 5 teams, but these were the 5 teams I wanted to focus on today. Before we all head out, remember to smash that like button, turn on those post notifications, and subscribe if you haven't already. B. Kelly, out.